For some time now, the Indian Railways has been introducing AC coaches in trains by replacing either sleeper or second-class coaches. In May, in 4 pairs of trains operating out of Mangaluru Central Railway Station, one sleeper coach was replaced by an AC 3-tier economy class coach. In September, in Bagmati Superfast Express, Rapti Sagar Superfast Express, and Muzaffarpur Express, an AC 3-tier economy class coach was introduced in place of a general second-class coach. So why is the Indian Railways doing this? Keep watching. Hello and welcome to another episode of The Data Point. Today we are taking a look at what is going on with the Indian Railways. What we're seeing happen is that the Railways is replacing its sleeper or second-class coaches with AC coaches. The reasoning behind this is that the AC coaches make the Railways more money, which is important because the Indian Railways' finances are in deep trouble, and they have been for some time. But train travel is a lifeline for lakhs of Indians, most of whom can't afford AC coaches. So what we've seen happen is sleeper and second-class coaches getting overwhelmed and overflowing as people with general tickets try to squeeze into them because the unreserved coaches just don't have enough space anymore. This is neither fair on them nor on those who reserved their seats. But this is not a new problem. Data shows us that this transition has been happening for some time now. To understand this, let's look at a breakdown. Here we see the percentage share of passengers carried by various classes of service. So AC sleeper and second class in both 2019 and 2020, and a decade back in 2009 and 2010. So in 2019 to 20, we see that out of all passengers carried by Indian Railways, including those holding both reserved and unreserved tickets, 7.8% traveled in the AC coaches. Compare that to 2009 to 10, where 3.6% of passengers were in AC coaches. That's a 4.2 percentage point increase. The share of those who traveled in second class fell by 8.7 percentage points, from 85.3% in 2009 to 10 to 76.5%. Now, if we look at the data for passengers who had reserved a ticket, we see that the share of reserved passengers carried by AC coaches increased by 9.8 percentage points. Sleeper class fell by 2.8 percentage points, and second class dropped by 6.6 percentage points from 2009 to 10 to 2019 to 20. And if we break this down further to see the zone-wise comparison, we see that the share of AC seats rose significantly in the Central, Northern, and Western railways. The Southern and Eastern railways, on the other hand, didn't see as much of an increase. And when we consider both reserved and unreserved passengers, the share of AC seats in the Central, Northern, and Western railways rose by over 5 percentage points, while second class's share fell by about 10 percentage points. Now, let's take a look at the financial side of things. Here, we see that the average rate in paise charged per passenger per kilometer across various classes of travel in Indian Railways in 2019 to 20, and the difference in the average rate when compared to 2009 to 2010. We see that there is an 80 paise difference per passenger per kilometer between AC 3-tier coaches and the reserved sleeper class in 2019 to 2020. On top of that, the fare of AC 3-tier has risen by 33 paise per passenger per kilometer in the past decade, but the reserved sleeper class only saw a 17.4 paise increase. This price difference really validates concerns about the affordability of train travel. The reason for these changes is because of the Indian Railways' poor operating ratio, which was only made worse by the pandemic. Before the pandemic, the Indian Railways used to spend an average of 98 rupees to earn 100 rupees. But in 2021 to 22, it spent 107 rupees to earn every 100. This is the situation because none of the coaches are making a profit. So here we see the operational profits and losses incurred by the railways in crore rupees. All the negative figures show the losses incurred in crore rupees, and the positive figures show the profits. Currently, the losses are clearly overwhelming across all classes. In other words, after the pandemic, none of the coaches were making a profit. Let's look at the losses even more closely, and then you'll see that a trend emerges. The losses have been progressively widening each year, even before the pandemic began. So while the railways was indeed affected by the pandemic like every other company, it was traveling into rough weather even before that. Before the pandemic, the AC3 tier was the only coach that was consistently bringing in profits. The AC chair car also made some money between 2016 to 2019. So in this sense, you can understand why the Railways is adding more AC 3-tier coaches. The Railway Ministry's answers in the Lok Sabha for multiple questions about the reduction of sleeper coaches show that the addition of AC coaches is seen as a way to, quote, garner additional revenue, unquote, or at least minimize its losses. The Railways has a lot of expenditure, like salaries, pension, and fuel. But since the implementation of recommendations of the 7th Central Pay Commission, the share of salaries and pensions spiked over the past few years. The share of pensions and staff costs combined increased from 60% to 69% between FY15 and FY22. And when the pandemic hit, internal revenue generation was of course hit even harder. Because of this poor revenue generation, the Railways has had to rely on extra budgetary resources like funds from Life Insurance Corporation and market borrowings, so that they can fund their capital expenditure for things like new tracks or new trains. When we see the share of internal revenue, which is the revenue generated by the railways, extra budgetary resources, and the gross budgetary support provided by the government in the total revenue receipts of the railways, this is what we see. The share of internal resources in the total revenue dropped from 79% in FY15 to 48% in FY21. On the other hand, reliance on extra budgetary resources rose from 5% to 42%. Because of the record budget allocation for the railways in FY22, the share of government budgetary support increased again, which slightly reduced the dependency on market borrowings. A higher dependency on market borrowings means increasing interest and principal payments, which would further hurt the railways' finances. So here's where we stand. With this being the railways' financial situation, pushing for higher-priced AC coaches kind of makes sense. But does the hike in prices and decreased availability of affordable tickets inadvertently impact the social service obligation that the railways has? Trains have to keep running even if there aren't that many passengers traveling down certain lines. And the price of the cheapest ticket cannot suddenly be hiked up beyond a certain level, because the Indian Railways cannot decide the way a for-profit private company does. Indian commuters have to go from point A to point B without burning a hole in their pockets. On the other hand, the railway finances have to be set in order. Is there a light at the end of this tunnel? Thanks so much for watching this video, and make sure you are subscribed to the Hindu's YouTube channel so that you do not miss the next one.